The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's US-based and available in 40 states. Head to Cut.com, that's KUTT.com, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play their fantasy pick'em for a chance to win 100 times your money in NBA, MLB, NHL, college basketball, and more. Sign up today using the promo code SGPN to get a 100% deposit match. And welcome everybody to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It's currently Friday, late Friday night, April 5th, and I'm your host, as always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, a bit of a shorter one though, only 4 matches to talk about because we are going to talk about the semifinals in Estoril and in Marrakech taking place on Saturday. So we're going to preview those 4 matches, but before we get into any of that, I do want to take care of some housekeeping. I want to remind everybody once again to like and subscribe on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, don't forget to rate and review. Also, a reminder that we have merch on the SGPN merch store. So if you want to support the show in another way, you can also buy a shirt, buy a mug, a lot of merchandise to support the show, and you know where to get it. Not to mention all the great merchandise from other shows on the SGPN platform. And a reminder, for the actual featured show of the week, the MLB Gambling Podcast, another show that I'm on. Baseball, we know, is in full swing, and we have episodes every weekday. So once again, you're looking at a very profitable way of betting on baseball, or you're looking for a way to potentially increase your knowledge on the sport, don't forget to check out the MLB Gambling Podcast. And of course, if you want my baseball picks on there, I'm on there multiple times per week. Besides that, though, time to start off with the actual recap of the last episode. Starting off with the lock and dog picks, overall decent. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong dog. There were a lot of options, and I feel like most of the ones that I was leaning towards were right. Unfortunately, the one I pulled the trigger on was wrong. But the lock was never in doubt. Had Ruud to win in straight sets at minus 125 against Fucsovics. He killed him. It was really never a question. Ruud faced one break point in the entire match. He dominated, and Fucsovics eventually got injured in the first game of the second set. He was up 40-love. He ended up missing a kind of like a half-jumping forehand down the line, and I guess he hurt his knee in the process. So he had to sweat out a potential retirement, which would have avoided the play. But Fucsovics decided to tough it out, and he ended up losing in straight sets pretty comfortably. So Ruud won and dominated. That was a nice, easy lock. For the dog, though, was not even close. We had Fognini and Kotov over 2.5 sets at plus 130. Fognini no-showed. Unfortunately, I ended up having some faith in 2024 Fognini, so I temporarily lost my mind. Apologies on that one. It's a little bit more unfortunate because thinking of all the other potential dogs that I actually liked from the card, the runner-up would have been the over 2.5 sets in the Baena match against Moreno, and then I talked myself out of it at the last minute. So, unfortunately, I did pick the wrong choice, ended up backing the trends for Fognini going to 3 sets, and I think it was 6 straight matches, and he got curb stomped. So apologies there. And at least the lock won, but I mentioned before, the leans for the episode were actually pretty good. Going to segue into the actual match recaps for Thursday. Hurkacz won in straight sets against Llamas Ruiz, but we did take Llamas Ruiz plus the 4, and that got there as he lost by 3. We were wrong on the Borges match. Garin ended up getting the job done in straight sets. There was a controversial moment there on breakpoint where the crowd made some noise, and then you had complete anarchy because the chair umpire forgot what the hell happened in the point, and it took away a break from Borges, and as a result, Garin ended up holding and eventually won the second set in a breaker. So the chair umpire made a colossal error, and it changed the entire complexion of the second set. The crowd will be booing Garin heavily tomorrow, so keep that in mind if you are going to be betting on that match. Crowd support will definitely be in favor of Hurkacz, not because they like Polish players, but because they probably can't stand Garin because Garin beat the home country guy, and there was some shady business going on in the middle of that second set. Martinez beat Gasquet in straight sets, had that coming, had that right. I just thought that Martinez was the better player. Gasquet beat Thiem, but he still passed his prime, and Martinez has looked solid so far in this event, and he looked solid once again on Friday. And Ruud, I mentioned before, did win 6-3, 6-2 in a very one-sided affair. Ruud looks phenomenal, just simply put. I'll get into that in a second when we actually preview the matchup against Martinez. But Ruud has tried to kind of change his game plan a bit. He's trying to be more aggressive with his actual ground strokes, and he looks great. No way around it. He's dominated so far in this event, and we'll see if he can keep it rolling. Of course, we had him for the lock. we have him to win the tournament at around 200, 220. So we have Ruud to win the whole thing. He's in the semis. The outrights, though, have actually done very well for us so far, knock on wood. We have at least one outright left in all three events. We have Ruud as the favorite at about plus 200, plus 220 in Estoril. We have a couple of longer shots, though. We have Darderi in the semis of Houston, and he is about 18 to 1. And then in Marrakech, we have Navone, who ended up beating Vukic in straight sets. But the point is, Navone, we got a 25 to 1. So we might be cooking with something. I'm not going to try to jinx anything, but we got a lot of draws, let's put it that way, to have a very big weekend if the outrights come through. But anyway, segueing into the Marrakech matches, Baino was able to remain alive for his title defense as he beat Moreno in 3. Moreno, though, pretty good clay player, but Baino was able to outlast him in the 3rd. Kotov killed Fognini. Berrettini did beat Sonego in straight sets, which I did get right. Sonego, I think, is a talented player with a 10-cent brain. I think that he's just not the smartest player on tour by any means, and the shot selection kind of killed him again. But Berrettini's look good, and it seems like his game is translated to the fast clay in Marrakech. So Berrettini looks sharp, and our boy Navone ended up beating Vukic in straight sets. We had that as well. We thought that Vukic would be tired after the 3-set marathon against Offner. He was, and Navone completely buried him 6-2, 6-4. As for the Houston matches, though, Echeverry ended up beating Mo in a set and one game, as Mo ended up retiring when he was up 1-0 into the second set. Shelton beat Nakashima, competitive match, 7-5, 7-6, 11-9 in the breaker. I believe Nakashima was up a break, serving for the set, I think, in the second set, and then he choked it. But either way, point is, Shelton did... No, I take it back, sorry. I thought he was up a break for some reason. Okay, my bad. I thought he was. Either way, point is that Shelton ended up fighting off 2 set points in the tiebreak, and he ended up winning 11-9 in the second set breaker. Darderi beat Giron. Darderi's good, man. Guy's a good clay player. I know that he kind of came out of nowhere as he ended up winning clay, his first ever ATP clay tournament, and I didn't really know anything about him. But watching him in that event and watching him really just dominate the competition, I think he's a really good clay player. So hopefully his 18-1 outright cashes for us. He does have a matchup, though, against the defending champion, as Tiafoe was able to beat Thompson 7-6, 6-4. So it should be a fun tournament. I should say a fun semis in Houston, but we're not going to actually cover it because we don't have any lines right now on all of the matches. So I'm not going to bother. We might potentially go back to the Houston tournament for the final in the next episode. But for the sake of this episode, I'm going to stay with Estoril and with Marrakech, and I really have nothing else to add for the sake of the recap. Now, moving on to the actual preview of the semifinal episodes, or semifinal tournaments, I mean, for the picks. We're going to start off in Marrakech because in chronological order, that tournament's starting a couple hours before Estoril. So starting off in Marrakech, you're looking at what should be, once again, a pretty interesting pair of semifinals. It seems to be pretty open because you're looking at Berrettini and Navone, and you're looking at Kotov and Baina. Those two can be very competitive, those two matches. So hopefully they deliver. And starting off with the first one, you have Baina as the early match taking on Kotov. Baina's around minus 120 on the money line. Kotov's around even money. Over-under set at 22.5. The over's minus 107, and the under's minus 113. For the game spread, Baina minus half a game is minus 125. You have Kotov plus half a game at minus 105. And if you want the set wagering, Baina to win in straight sets is plus 200. Kotov to win in straight sets is plus 240. Over 2.5 sets is plus 130. Now, we know Baina's the defending champion, so I feel like a lot of people will blindly consider taking him. He's also 1-0 in the head-to-head. They faced off on clay in Madrid in 2022, and Baina got the job done in 3 sets. Now, Kotov has looked very sharp in this event, as he was able to beat Kaboli in straight sets, or I'm going out of order, beat Ben Chatrit in straight sets, beat Kaboli, who's our guy on the podcast, beat him in straight sets, and beat Fognini in straight sets. So a bit fortunate Fognini made it that far, but still looked dominant in the process. As for Baina, he's looked good, ended up beating Moreno in 3, beat Evans in straight sets, and beat Gigante in a set and a quarter because Gigante got injured and ended up retiring. So I think Kotov is actually pretty live to win this, as the odds reflect, because you're looking at what's basically a coin flip. I think I like the over, just simply put. I see a 3-set match here. I think it's going to be a competitive one. I do think, though, I am going to lean to Kotov. I know that it's always, I'd say, a challenge to fade the defending champion here. But I do think Kotov's firepower can give Baena problems. We saw Moreno have success unloading the forehand, especially pushing Baena around the court. And I do think Kotov's serve can be more threatening than Baena's. So I think it's going to be a close match, but I do think that there is a little bit of value on Kotov. I think it should be directly a -110 line. I think even money on a coin flip is always worth consideration. That's what Kotov is. I will lean that way, but I definitely prefer the over 2.5 sets, or maybe the over on a team total for Baena or for Kotov. I see a long match. The first match ended up going 3 between them in Madrid, including a 7-5 and a 7-6 set in there. So I see a longer match, but I am going to lean to the dog here. Give me Kotov to get the job done in the spot. Moving on to the next matchup, we have Berrettini taking on Navone. Now, of course, we're already priced in with Navone at a really solid 25-1 outright price, so hopefully he pulls off the upset. Berrettini, though, is -210. Navone is +180. As for the actual game spread, Berrettini -3 and Navone is +3. Over-under for games is set at 22. Looking at the set wagering, you can find Berrettini in straight sets at +120. Navone to win a set is -150. And Navone to win in straight sets is +400. Over 2.5 sets is +140. Now, Navone has looked very good so far in this event. So is Berrettini, though, so something's going to have to give into this matchup. Navone, though, ended up beating Dugas in the first round, then beat Wawrinka in 3. Wawrinka was in very solid form, especially in that first round match, as he killed Ramos Vinolas, which is no surprise. I believe he's 9-0 lifetime against Ramos Vinolas, but he was still playing some good tennis, and Navone did outlast him, winning in 3, and then he beat Vukic in straight sets. Maybe a bit fortunate that the main seed in his section, Offner, did lose to Vukic, but not his problem. Still a win nonetheless. As for Berrettini, he killed Shevchenko in the first round, then beat Munar in 3. No shame in that. Munar, we know, is a pretty consistent veteran clay player, and he beat Sonego, one of the favorites in the event as well, in straight sets. Now, even though we have Navone to win the tournament, so obviously we're rooting for him anyway, do I think Navone is going to win? Personally, no. I think Berrettini's going to win. I think the issue is the firepower and the serve. I just think Berrettini is going to be able to hold on a more regular basis. Navone does have an underrated amount of firepower, especially from the backhand side. Really solid backhand, but we know Berrettini is not afraid of running around his. He can unload on the forehand, has solid net skills, and I do think that the serve will be the differentiating factor between these two players. So even though we're rooting for Navone, I am hoping that I am wrong on my lean here. I think Berrettini is going to win. The question is, where exactly is the value? Because it's definitely not on 210, and I really don't want to lay 3 games with Berrettini, because I can see maybe a breaker. I can see maybe a 3-set match. I think I'd look to Berrettini team total over 12.5 at -120. You get a 7-5 or a 7-6, and you're basically cruising at that point. But I do think that Berrettini is going to get the job done, so I'm going to try to get creative. I'm not picking straight sets, though. Maybe there's value on the over 2.5 sets at +140, but I'm going to go with the team total instead. Give me Berrettini team total over 12.5 games at -120. Moving on to Estoril, you have 2 pretty entertaining matchups. You have Green taking on Hurkacz. Fun fact, this is Hurkacz's first ever ATP Clay semifinal. So congrats to him for getting the job done. And you're looking at the overall line here. Of course, Hurkacz is the favorite. Hurkacz is currently available at around -183. Green's around +163. As for the over-under, 23 flat. As for the actual game spread, you have Hurkacz -3, and you have Green +3. A little bit of juice there to Green in the with the +3. Moving on to the actual sets, you can find Hurkacz to win in straight sets at +145. Green to win a set is -175. And if you want the over 2.5 sets, you can find that at +130. Now, Green had a bit of a controversial win against Borges, but he was still winning, and he did win the first set. So I'm not saying that he would have definitely lost had the controversy with the crowd not occurred, but I am going to say he definitely could have been more, let's say, sportsmanlike in the way that he handled it. And I thought the post-match presser where he either misremembered what happened or just selective recall. I'm not sure there, but his explanation post-match didn't make any sense either. And I know Kyrgios called him out for it and called out the chair umpire on Twitter. But the point is, Green's been solid. We know that he's a clay court specialist, basically. Struggled with his fitness for the last couple of years, but it seems like he's back in good form. Made a pretty good run or a decent run in Girona right before this, so he had some clay challenger practice, which worked out well. Hurkacz, though, really is not known for his clay prowess, obviously, and he had an okay showing in Miami, lost in 3 sets to Dimitrov on hard court, then transitioned over and basically beat 2 nobodies. Beat Chonsky, I might have mispronounced that, but sorry, Chowinski, and he ended up beating Llamas Ruiz, and Llamas Ruiz might be a good clay player, but the point is they're 2 relative unknown challenger-level guys. This is a step up in competition. So I have to at least point out that Hurkacz winning each of the first 2 matches 7-6, 6-4 against clay specialist challenger players. I'm not sure what the takeaway actually is, because on one hand, you still have to win the matches on a court that you're not familiar with or a surface that you don't typically like. On the other hand, though, they were relatively weaker competition based on their careers up to this point. So Garin is definitely the best opponent that Hurkacz will face in this event right now. And you're looking at Garin, who's faced off against pretty good competition. Ended up beating Borges, who was in good form, beat Musetti in straight sets, beat Fees in 3. Fees has been a mess in 2024, but he's definitely better than the 2 challenger guys I mentioned on Hurkacz's side. And he beat Rodionov in straight sets. Rodionov's another challenger-level guy, same type of grouping as Llamas Ruiz, for example, but he ended up winning that one in straight sets. So I think the values on Garin in this one. I mentioned before, crowd support will heavily be in favor of Hurkacz because the crowd definitely is not going to like Garin, probably similar to Mutet in Santiago, where everyone booed the crap out of him. And we're going to see if Garin, I'd say enjoys the energy, the negative energy that the crowd gives him. But the point is, I do think Garin is definitely worth a sprinkle on the money line at about plus 163. It's Hurkacz's first ever clay semi, and he beat 2 challenger level guys. I'm not going to overreact and tell you he's figured clay out. This isn't Medvedev randomly winning a Masters 1000 event on clay. I think Hurkacz is going to be in line to potentially struggle. I see a competitive match. I see a very, very unpredictable match between the 2, and I think as a result there is some value on the dog in this one. So I am going to go with Garin plus the 3 games, and I am going to go with the money line at about plus 163. I just think Hurkacz is a bit over, I'd say a bit mispriced. I think he's a bit overrated in the spot, just based on his lack of consistent clay results. And Garin, I think, is definitely more comfortable to the actual environment. So for me, I'm going to lean to Garin in this spot at a pretty decent price. And the last one we're going to talk about is Ruud against Martinez. Ruud is a massive favorite. Biggest favorite on the card, as he's minus 500, and Martinez is around plus 395. As for the game spread, somewhere between 4.5 and 5 in favor of Ruud, but you can find Martinez at 5 or 4.5. Over-under for games is set at 20.5. For set wagering, Ruud in straight sets is about minus 155. Martinez to win a set is plus 125, and the over 2.5 sets is a plus 190. Now, there is some head-to-head history between the 2 of them. Faced off on clay back in 2021 in Kitzbühel, and you ended up seeing Martinez lose, but he did win a set. Ruud won 6-1, 4-6, 6-3. Does it mean anything? Not really, because Ruud's a younger player. He's definitely gotten a lot better over the last 3 years, making a couple of French Open finals. So I don't exactly know if it matters, but I have to at least point out that Martinez has been good in this event. Did beat Altmaier in straight sets, beat Batista Agut in straight sets, and beat Gasquet in straight sets. Also did win the title in Girona. So I mentioned before how you had a couple of players practicing their clay chop, so to speak, in a challenger event before this one, and you ended up seeing Martinez win that event, beating Albert in the final. But I do think Martinez, even though he's in good form, I just have a hard time picking against Ruud right now. Ruud looked that good in the first 2 rounds against Van de Zandschulp and against Fuchsovics. I just think Ruud is easily, by a wide margin, the best player here. And we know that Ruud has the meme reputation of owning every clay 250. It's the only tournaments he actually wins. And Ruud has been more aggressive on the actual wings with the forehand especially, and the serve's been very solid. I just think Martinez, despite playing good form, is going to lose, I'd say valiantly. I think maybe he'll go to 6-4, 6-4, but I just think Ruud is too much firepower, and I think Ruud will be able to kind of move Martinez all around the court. Now, Martinez does have some hand skills, so maybe you'll see him serve and volley a bit more than people might think, but he's really not a great server. So I do think Ruud, with his overall, I'd say, skill set and his comfortability in Estoril, because he's the defending champion, I just think he's going to win this one in straight sets. So I am going to go with Ruud in straight sets at about minus 155. Not going to take the spread, though. I think Martinez can hang around, but I think Ruud is once again head and shoulders better than everybody here. Give me Ruud to get the job done in straight sets. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual preview of the 4 matches in Marrakech and Estoril for Saturday. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks. But before we continue that, do you want to take a quick word from our sponsor? We're also brought to you by Cut. Cut is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's U.S.-based and available in 40 states. Peer-to-peer social betting is a new and better way to bet directly against your friends or other users on sports, politics, pop culture, and other events with verifiable outcomes, plus a ton of social features to give it the feel of a betting social network. Cut offers lower vig and fully customizable odds so you can create your own bets. Cut handles the payment side of things, so you never have to worry about chasing down your money. Social features include group chats, betting leaderboards, head-to-head history, user profiles, fan groups, and more. And they also have great rewards. Get cash back every single time you bet against your friends or other users. So download Cut today in the App Store or over at cut.com. That's Kutt, and use promo code SGPN for a 10% deposit bonus. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the place to play fantasy sports because it is the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. They have great pick'em games. For example, you can pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total into their upcoming games. You can win up to 100 times your money in a single night. Pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry, and you can also make rivals picks, which pits 2 players against each other, so you can pick which player you think might have more points, for example, in an NBA game. But a reminder that you should also join Underdog Fantasy because they have a lot of very fun markets for tennis. They have, for example, breaks of serve, they have aces, they have a lot of fun tennis options to make matches more interesting, and I recommend you joining the platform in order to take advantage of those opportunities. So sign up today with promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Visit underdogfantasy.com or find them on the App Store, and don't forget to register with the promo code SGPN to get your first deposit doubled up to $100, as well as an instant pick'em special. Must be 18 plus and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the semifinal matches for Saturday in Marrakech and in Estoril. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I think I have to double down on it. I think I have to repeat plays from the last episode. I got to go Ruud in straight sets. Now, of course, the price here is a lot worse than the price was on Friday, for Friday's matches, I mean, because minus 125 was a gift. Like Fuchsovics, I don't know what that line was. Martinez, I will admit, has been in good form, but Ruud is so much better than everybody here that I think that this price is actually a bit cheap at minus 152. Ruud, for reference, beat Van de Zandschulp, who's a pretty solid player in general, very streaky, but we know he's talented, and he beat Coria in the first round, who's a solid clay player. So Van de Zandschulp beat Coria, was in decent form, and Ruud buried him. Ruud lost 3 games in the entire match. Then he went up against Fuchsovics. Yes, Fuchsovics did get injured early in the second set, but he was down a set in a break, so Ruud was already coasting up to that point, and that was kind of the nail in the coffin. So Ruud has been very solid so far in this event, defending champion as well. Martinez has been good, but he was able to beat Agut, and he was able to beat Gasquet. 2 guys past their prime. I think we'd agree Gasquet beating him in straight sets is, don't get me wrong, it's still a win, but I think we'd agree it's not as impressive as the name brand would suggest, because Gasquet is towards the final stages of his, I'd say, career ending. He's going to stick around for the French Olympics, then maybe he'll retire at the end of the year. But Gasquet really does not have much left in the tank, and that was still 6-4, 6-4. Also beat Altmaier, good win there, I have to point out. But the point is, I do think that Ruud is definitely the better player. And I think that based on that, he should win this in straight sets. If Martinez does hang in there and make the match competitive, I would not be totally shocked. But competitive and winning a set are two totally different animals. I think Ruud will look comfortable once again, and I think that he will get the job done. So give me Ruud to win in straight sets at minus 152 as the lock. For the dog, I think I am going to go with an underdog, but I'm not going to go with an actual money line play. Instead, I'm going to get cute with it. I'm going to go with an underdog on a reduced spread. Give me Green plus the 1.5 games at plus 130. Coverings why I'm going to go with the actual spread instead of the money line. First reason, Hurkacz is a tie-break machine. He's had at least one tie-break in 11 straight matches. So most of those are on hard court, but the first two clay matches here had a breaker in it. So the point is Hurkacz can win a set via breaker, maybe loses a set by margin, and at that point you're in pretty good shape. But I do expect to see a couple of close sets. Of course, you basically win the plus 1.5 if it goes 3 sets based on Hurkacz's tendencies to have a bunch of breakers. But it's his first ever clay ATP semifinal. If Green wins, you probably win the spread anyway. But I do kind of want the insurance policy of a potential 3-setter where Hurkacz wins a breaker and then loses a set by a decent margin, and that way you basically win no matter what happens in the third set. But Green's faced off against better competition. I mentioned it before. Hurkacz has beaten 2 challenger-level players in Llamas Ruiz and in Chowinski, and you're looking at Green, who beat Borges, pretty solid player, who I was wrong about. I thought he wasn't very good until this past year, but he has been solid. Beat Fees, who's a mess, but we know that he still has some clay talent, and beat Rodionov. I'll group Rodionov with the 2 guys that Hurkacz beat, but Borges against the home crowd and Fees definitely better than Llamas Ruiz and Chowinski. So I do think Green's face off against a better competition. I think that he's obviously the more comfortable clay player, as he's basically a clay specialist. Give me the clay specialist fading a guy who, historically speaking, is not very good on clay at plus 130 as my dog. So once again, my picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Ruud to win in straight sets once again at minus 152. I'm not sure he drops a set in the entire tournament. And for the actual dog, I'm going to go with Green plus 1.5 games at plus 130. That's going to wrap it up, though, for this episode. Reminder, for next episode, we'll cover the final in Estoril and in Marrakech. We might also cover Houston, depends on when the lines actually come out for Houston. I'm not going to wait around for them, but if the lines come out, maybe we'll do it. So just going to at least leave the, I'd say, potential open for a Houston breakdown for the final, but not going to promise anything. Either way, though, you can find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show, the NFL show, WNBA show, and you get the point. Until next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.